Welcome to Ac3TV. I'm Sarah Deering, and in this episode we meet David Jaffe, Consulting Director of Limebridge Australia, to discuss why we are so stuck on GOS. Welcome, David.
Well, Sarah, it's really great to be here. We in Limebridge Australia are really proud to be associated with the industry insight segments of this great new concept.
So, David, first question, why are we stuck on GOS?
Well, Sarah, we just don't understand why the whole call centre industry is so fixated on grade of service. We have two big problems with it. The first problem is that all the research we've ever seen says that customers care more about two other things than they care about GOS. The first thing they care about more is whether they get their problem resolved on first contact. The second thing they care about is what the experience was like as a whole to get them the resolution they're after. And the third thing, which is almost a hygiene factor, is GOS, and yet that's the predominant measure in the industry. The second problem with it we have is that we measure the call centre managers on it, but typically they don't actually control all the things that drive grade of service. In fact, they have very few of those things in their control. So we just think that's madness to measure them on something they can't control.
Let's just explore that for a moment. What do you mean most of the drivers aren't in a call centre manager's control?
Well, it's one of the great ironies of the industry. If we look at this picture, you can see that there are two major causal factors: the demand side, or why the calls occur, and the supply side, which is how do we handle the call. Looking at the demand side first, there are a whole bunch of other departments who are really driving the contacts, like billing, like credit, like marketing. And then on the supply side, there are things like the technology environment and the complexity of processes that really aren't in the control of the call centre manager either. Put them together and the call centre manager can't control the drivers of grade of service.
Right, that's starting to make sense now. So what can a call centre manager control?
Well, we think they can do a lot more on the supply side, and we think there are 5 things, and we use the acronym PRISM to describe them. P stands for practices and processes. R stands for resourcing, as in who they recruit and how. I stands for indicators and incentives. S for structure, as in the skills and how they organise. And M for what management does, things like coaching and reporting and so forth. Now, controlling those 5 things gives them at least a little bit more control of GOS.
And in terms of pure measurements, what are some of the other problems with only focusing on GOS as a measure?
Well, we've got 2 big problems. The first is that GOS is an average, and because it's an average, it hides a myriad of evils. So if we look at a typical call centre during the day, there might be some periods of the day when the phone's being answered quite quickly and those customers are getting a good experience. But other times of the day when it takes ages for them to get an answer, and yet the overall GOS figure for the day as a whole still looks okay. The second problem is you can trick it. There's all kinds of well-known tricks that some call centres pull to make their grade of service look better. One, for example, is called queue choking, where you don't open up as many queues, so a lot of customers get a busy signal, and the ones that do get through appear to get better grade of service. But of course, we're not measuring the customer experience for everybody.
Yeah, so David, over the years, boards have been conditioned to think that GOS is the only available tool to measure contact centre performance. How do we reset those expectations?
Well, we mentioned earlier that customers care more about resolving their problem and their overall effort to get that resolution than they care about GOS. So the first thing we'd suggest is let's share that research with the board so they understand what's driving the customer. Then we need to start measuring those things. So for example, if we're going to understand resolution, we may need to measure what percentage of the calls get resolved on first contact. Even harder is measuring the overall effort for the customer. That starts with things like how long do they spend navigating menus before they get queued, which is how we measure it today with GOS. Then we need to look at how long do they spend talking to operators. Do they get put on hold? Do they get transferred? And we need to understand their overall effort from the start of the call to the resolution they're looking for. And if we get on top of that, we'd also say, let's start understanding and measuring demand and seeing who really is accountable for driving those calls into the contact centre. Let's get the whole business working on the problem of grade of service.
Well, I get the feeling we've just scratched the surface of challenging some of the stock standard industry concepts. David, where can our viewers go to get more information?
Well, if they're interested in some of the ideas I've been talking about and other thoughts we have that really challenge some of the thinking in the call centre industry, our website www.limebridge.com.au, has a range of white papers and case studies that I think your viewers will be interested in.
Terrific. I'm sure a lot of our viewers will be visiting your website shortly. David, thank you so much for joining us today and helping us challenge some of the conventional thinking around greater service.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed the discussion and I hope your viewers have as well. And perhaps they'd like to join us next time when we're going to talk about, are we stuck on ineffective service models?
Well, there you have it. Thank you for watching this episode of Ac3TV. We would love your feedback, so pop back to our LinkedIn group and drop us a line.